Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Product Analytics Weekly. It is the 3rd of October, and I'll start us off by sharing my screen. All right, can everyone see?
Yep.
Can everyone see my screen?
Can also see, yes.
Always good. Let's start with reviewing the billboard. There's a few issues here in open. I'm not going to read through everything here. I'm just going to leave it or give it a few seconds for any issues that anyone wants to call out.
One thing I would call out is the one assigned to me, the update cube schemas. The user ID work that instrumentation has done is merged into DevKit. The analytics stack one, I believe, is assigned to Dennis from Basti for that side of things. So this is ready to begin scoping out. So I'm going to do that this afternoon so we can get that into ready for development and start working on it.
All right, so what would you say? Should we change the workflow label?
No, because right
Okay.
now I've got to figure out the solution first because we've got two options, whether to use segments or filters. And I just need to determine which approach is technically the simplest to implement, at least, if not the correct way.
Gotcha. All right, any
Cool.
other issues?
Yeah, I can speak to the at a high level, the two confidential ones, starting with the cost data. Without going into details, we're ready to start. We are spending money to run the clusters, so it's we have the visibility into it. What we're going to start doing is once I'm able to verify, I'm still kind of nailing down a couple of different minor issues now, but just making sure that we have at least a reasonable amount of integrity compared to our existing snowplow numbers. But once we have that, we can start sampling on a daily basis how much it costs for high traffic days, for low traffic days, what it costs to run the cluster as it currently stands. That means we haven't done any performance tuning. We haven't sized things down. Things are scaling as they need to, but there hasn't been any optimization done on that. So I'll start by getting some rough cost figures, and then potentially we can see if we can kind of get more clarity and potentially lower that number. But of course, not do it so prematurely, if that makes sense. And as far as usage limits, I worked with James a little bit more on this last week. The goal is still to define the limits. The tricky part is about how we actually enforce it. Right now, since we're kind of trying to get more infrastructure support, I'm going to be reaching out to see what our solutions are here utilizing Cloudflare. But in the meantime, I think something that we can do is by sending potentially the application ID as a request header, so that we can use that with Google Cloud's Cloud Armor to be able to deny requests. So basically, we want to at least have the visibility. We want to have the limits defined. We may not have a fully automated way for enforcing those limits, but at least we can identify potentially bad actors or people who are just excessively using it so that we can shut them off. We have some control to be able to shut them off. So yeah, I think that's it for my part of open.
I had one question actually around these items.
Sure.
Regarding the not your item specifically, Dennis, but actually this is probably pointed at you since James isn't here. Regarding the product analytics onboarding documentation, I noticed it hasn't had any movement, and is one of our key issues to tackle this milestone.
Mm-hmm.
The aim of it is to create, or essentially a walkthrough of how to onboard to product analytics in a more refined way than what we currently have. Just go through the documentation.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask: is this a engineering-led issue or a technical writing one? This is it's documentation and or a video. It seems like, so I'm not entirely sure if this should be done by engineering or written by someone with more writing ability, essentially.
I mean, in my opinion, I think anyone could pick this up in terms of just like creating the step-by-step tutorial and recording a video as well, or we can piece that out. Maybe someone can do the step-by-step tutorial as far as documenting that, and then someone else can do the video. Ultimately, I think it should go through technical writing just to kind of give it the polish it needs as far as the written documentation. I think the video can evolve as things change, of course, with our feature set. So that's just kind of my head around it. I don't think it's really specific to James or I to do. If anyone else on the group wants to do it as well, we could but please feel free to take it.
I
Does
guess
that answer
with,
your
I
question?
think Lorena's still on holiday, isn't she? So
Yeah.
has this been discussed or scheduled with the technical writing team in any way?
No, I don't believe so. Um,
I also don't think it needs to. I mean, I think this is something that one of us can draft up and then send to the team as a whole. Like we can just ping the channel, ask if anyone's available to review it. And that's also something that she can review when she's back, and she'll like be able to correct any issues.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's nothing stopping us from having a rough draft for the written side of this. In the video, I think there'll likely be multiple iterations of that just as the feature set evolves. So I don't think that needs to be particularly polished, other than just here's another way to like kind of see how it goes from start to finish. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. I added the ready for development label there, so
Thanks, John.
it's in our queue. Blocked, we have filter by user ID. Rob, I believe this is related to work that you're doing.
Yeah, this is going to be blocked until the analytics stack changes, and more broadly the instrumentation team's wider issues closed off. And we also need to do that schema stuff that I'm going to be figuring out how to make that work so I can go and ready for development. Once that's done, then that can be unblocked and the front end can begin.
Awesome. Dennis, you have the next one.
Yeah, if you don't mind moving this to NDev, I think that would be a more accurate representation of it. But we're underway with logging and monitoring, so it's both Max and I working on this. I'm trying to identify kind of the metrics we need to be paying attention to once we actually get logging and monitoring set up. But as you might have seen from last week, Max was able to get logging set up for the dev clusters, sending logs to Loki, which means that we can use our existing Grafana instance to actually query and create dashboards and alerts based on our logs. So that's pretty exciting. We just need to continue to roll that out to the other clusters, which include some that are in infrastructure managed environments and some that are still not, kind of as we work our way through that. But the solution is still the same. As far as monitoring, that's a bit of a different. This really should be potentially split up into many issues. But monitoring hasn't been picked up yet. But it'll largely be the same, where we expose service metrics from our services to Prometheus, and then we send that over to our existing infrastructure to be able to query across that. So yeah, it's underway, but I'll work on splitting that issue out so it's a little bit more pointed.
Should we link the testing plan that Eugen's been creating into that, since it's essentially a form of monitoring to make sure that we're not breaking anything when we do the deployment process? Or is this specifically more infrastructure related monitoring?
This is specifically around infrastructure. I would agree it is a type of monitoring, but I think that's more of a before we commit changes to it, where this monitoring, given that it's on the infrastructure side of things, this is like what's happening with our live service. And so anything that kind of happens after we've committed changes and are deploying a release. We can link them as like related. I think there's information we can share across the two, potentially. Actually, I'm not even maybe, but like because logging and like the metrics that gets reported, it's kind of like after the fact, whereas I think against testing and validation is like as it happens or soon after it happens, and it's more for ongoing monitoring, but as well as like for the changes that we haven't committed yet. Like that's something we're trying to figure out of like how do we validate the stack for like at the commit level, so but we can validate that it doesn't break anything before we push the merge button.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess I feel by solving monitoring, hopefully we'll have the APIs or at least the knowledge to be able to plug that data in a similar way into our tests as well, because the same outputs will probably be used for both. It's just one's going into our monitoring stack and one's going into our test results.
Yeah, we'll see, because I think we're looking at using, and maybe Evgen, you can speak to this if you'd like, like about using different tools around plugging into the services to be able to actually get them what we need out of validating it. But if they are the same, then definitely we can use it. Share the results.
Yeah, I don't know if we can use logs specifically in test, like querying logs. I don't know if it makes sense or even like how to do that. So we want to get data directly from the tools we use, like for example, getting directly from Kafka cluster, what event arrived. So I mean, if there is no other way, then we can maybe get things from logs somehow. But I'm like, in my experience, we never did that in the test in the tests.
Yeah.
But maybe we can link this issue in the comments near testing plan, so we know it exists, and we can maybe in future try to use it. But I think it's more like separate thing, even though like logging and monitoring, it's also part of testing. It's just not directly coupled with automated tests we will have probably.
Yeah, and just for context, like we're exploring, this is for the entire team, like we're exploring different ways to like directly access data on Kafka, which wouldn't be used for like traditional logging and monitoring. So the approaches may ultimately be different, but I get your point, Rob, that it's if we do have a solution for one, we should evaluate it against the other, just to be sure. Cool.
Right.
Sorry, I can go ahead and speak to the other issue. So since I have the next one, yeah. So this is customer facing infrastructure release. So this is just anything infrastructure topics related to like us getting out to beta and GA. So you're going to see this epic issue quite a bit. Though I'm working on scoping that out. For example, I'm scoping out what needs to be done to make sure Cube is production ready for the beta release, and then subsequently I'll create one for the GA release. So I need to go through basically this issue and see if I can potentially just close it out so we can bring in more better defined issues around the rest of our services to support customer facing releases.
Right. Then Khalil, you have this issue to decouple product analysis from customizable dashboards. Anything you'd like to add on this?
So yeah, that's it. The title says I'm decoupling the customizable dashboard and also the value stream dashboards from the product analytics features. It's being in development. I'm planning to put a MR today or tomorrow for the backend, and then there will be some follow-ups for the front end part. But it should be finished this milestone hopefully. Yeah.
So this is a change that's been a long time coming. So it's good to finally see it. Then I have the next two. One is the small improvement to UI layout. That I have a local branch with the changes pretty much ready. But in the interim while working on this, I made a suggestion that I think it would be more usable to slightly tweak our design that we originally planned for this issue, where we still had this visualization column. And my suggestion is to move it up to a form field underneath title that's freeing up a column and removing a lot of just empty white space. So yeah, that's what I'm going ahead with. That's also related to this issue. So this issue to update the visualization designer's visualize column, that is a lot of visualize. I've updated to match that design. Currently working on this, should be ready for review by the end of the day. Then Rob, you have add link click events. Anything
Schema's all the way
add?
down for me lately. Yeah, this is the dev kit schema is in review with Hello. I accidentally sent it to review for Max, and then that evening I was like, Max isn't here. What am I doing? That was a stupid move on my part. So once Hello's had a chance to take a look at it, I'll then do the analytics stack implementation and move this into review and validate verification, etc., and work my way through. This will just allow us to then do the other aspects around getting click events finally working.
Gotcha. Then we have this issue from Alvin to hide product analytics settings when the experimental toggle is disabled. Does anyone have an update on this? I don't see anything here, but
One thing I would say, there's been a Slack conversation with Ezekiel from Optimize that the experimental toggle is causing issues for their migration on the group level. Max decided to jump in on this holiday. Bad Max, if he watches this when he comes back, shouldn't do that, to say that he'd be okay with us reverting the experimental toggle, and then he'll take a look when he gets back. Essentially, the check is too high up in the stack for them, and it needs to be slightly closer to product analytics specific functionality, not the more general analytics dashboards functionality, as far as I can gather. So I'm not sure if we should be working on this or not right now until that gets resolved.
This sounds very similar to what Alil is working on in terms of decoupling, where a lot of our toggles are set, or product analytics toggles are affecting analytics as a whole, which is a problem now that we are sharing the space with Optimize.
Elwin is on that Slack conversation as well, but I will also update that issue just to point him in the direction, and let him make that call whether he wants to hold off or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And thanks for making that update. Then in review, Khalil, we have update product analytics cluster settings fields. Anything you'd like to add?
It's under review. It was mostly like dropping some columns, but just one of the columns were forgotten to be ignored. So I created another ticket. So this one will be merged current milestone, but in the next milestones, we will need to remove one more column. But other than that, it's just in review.
Great. Rob, anything you'd like to add about this modifier?
No, I pinged the Cube.js member that assigned themselves to the PR. I haven't heard anything back, so I'm going to give them the rest of the week, and if I still don't hear anything, I'm going to start making a lot of noise in the Slack channel until someone tells me how long it's going to take for them to get back to me, because it's been 2 weeks now with no movement or feedback at all. Not even a "we'll get to this soon."
Great, thanks for keeping an eye on this. Then we have this issue from Max to add the GraphQL endpoint to get product analytics usage. Does anyone have an update on this? See, the latest is, this is just being moved into review. Looks like the merge requests are complete, so this can probably go into verification. And then I have the next issue to handle unsafe changes in Alex dashboard. Half of this work has been merged. The other half to also handle unsafe changes when a user navigates away is currently stuck in maintainer review. The maintainers got some feedback that our architecture of our front-end files is a bit of a mess, which I wholeheartedly agree with. So they're a bit nervous to merge any more additions to that with technical debt. We do have an issue to refactor our front-end files into something that's much nicer and sleeker, but I have a meeting tomorrow with that maintainer to synchronously discuss and to explain like our situation. And hopefully with that,
sorry.
No, and hopefully with that discussion, we can find a workable solution that doesn't completely block us on this, or means that we need to immediately rewrite everything.
What is the maintainer advocating for, like a rewrite or massive refactor, or?
A pretty substantial refactor, because once you start moving state from one component to another, it's kind of like a domino effect. And that's exactly, it is something that the front engineers, Rob, myself, and Alvin have discussed before this feedback even came in as something we wanted to do. And there is a quite a big issue highlighting this as a maintenance item that we can pick up in the near future. But yeah, I've added their feedback to it, and I'll report back tomorrow with what their suggestions are.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be keen to know how that conversation goes, just because, I mean, I would definitely want to prioritize refactoring it, but it also, like, we haven't really released this to openly, so I kind of want to balance that a little bit, if that makes sense.
Total.
I vocalized this in other conversations, but I might as well say now, as long as we can, I feel like as long as we can scope out the work and come up with a valid implementation plan and then work with James and Dennis on when we can get this work done, I feel like that's a valid step forward that, you know, balancing our own velocity and where we want to be with getting this fixed, because we know it's a problem and none of us like it. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable response to their request, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that I'm going to suggest tomorrow as like, hey, if we can get this implemented or planned and scheduled, can we go ahead and merge the current changes as is? But yeah, I mean, it's just a carryover of going from a very rough technical POC into production. It's just growing pains. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to balance that in terms of, like, if there's a cost to, like, do take a good chunk of capacity to do this refactor, and we're still waiting for customer feedback where there may be more changes on the road. Like, I don't want to delay it, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but I just want to make sure, like, we're not, I don't want to even call it premature, but I want to make sure that we're like refactoring at the right time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I will add more reasoning as to why I think a refactor at this time already makes sense, because the thing that highlighted it was actually working on this issue. Rob also mentioned it in his maintainer review of this. And I also mentioned it while developing, working on the features, is we're having some state management issues because GridStack has its own state management, and we're trying to like fight against that, and there's a lot of friction.
Got it.
Right. Then we have 3 issues in review from Alvin. I think a lot of these I just merged, but I can quickly check.
The last 2, we definitely merged, either me or you. The first one, I'm not sure.
Visualization designer does not handle longer legends.
That's
is
a GitLab UI thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is indeed. I'll quickly look at the merge request. Okay, this is still open in review. Right. I'm aware that we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna say, is there any, or I'm gonna ask, is there any closed issue that anyone wants to call out? Else, I think we don't need to run through the entire list.
I think, I'm sorry, I'm just like going through it. I just call out, like, I don't know, we removed the snowplow prefix schema. So, I mean, yes, we're using snowplow, but we definitely wanted to keep, like, the naming of things fairly agnostic. So it's nice to see that change. And then I think one I'm particularly excited about, and thanks Khalil for sorting this out, is projects cannot reset up product analytics at the project level if they've already onboarded with an instance level cluster. It's a mouthful. So not that this happens often, but especially when you're making changes or connecting to different clusters, it can get confusing. And as we look to the future in terms of supporting different types of cluster configurations, I think it's quite useful there. You were on it at one point. Yeah. Yeah. All good. But
yeah, I was looking for it, but
yeah, it's fine. No worries. But yeah, I just call out those 2 issues. I think those are some pretty good changes, but they're all quite nice and a lot of improvements overall. So great to see.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
would like to just call out Elwin's work to extend the create alert utility to easily support links in the message. This is just a nice developer quality of life improvement to make it even easier for us to use the existing utility, and also extend it to the entire engineering department to make use of that ability, just to make it even easier to add links into alerts. So I just wanted to shout out that contribution to the wider community.
100%. And Alvin, if you're watching this, great job on just all the follow-ups and all the work that you've done to improve our quality and quality of life of everything so far. Great job. All right, that was quite a lengthy board review, but that means it's good. Lots to discuss.
We get to update the bookmark.
Yeah, but I mean, we also at the same time didn't actually discuss this stuff, but I'll add it.
Well, the list will only get longer.
Okay, but the Heian show is over. Evgen, you've got the next topic.
Yeah, just a question that I have. So, okay, I'll share. Maybe I'll share the screen. So here, I don't know if you're aware of what plugin that is part of workflow in quality engineering. So every Monday there is what plugin issue is created, and there is a section for product analytics, and automatically we pull issues that are labeled ready for development, workflow ready for development, and workflow in dev. And the expectation that I would go there and add like testing requirements for each. So the question I have is like, should there be extra labels that we should filter this list by, like maybe some separate label, or would you like to have this like input from my side as is, like for ready for development and in dev issues? So that's a question I have. What labels should we use to pull issues into this quad plugin? And if you have questions, like I don't know if you are aware of this quad plugin thing and like how it works, but yeah,
I think this is fairly new, given like we hadn't had a quality counterpart for some time. I would be inclined to say whatever label makes it easier for you to filter by, so that you know you've gone through it. I'm not sure if you're ready to give like, or I don't know, like I guess the question, let me answer your question with a question. If you're ready to actually like go into these issues and add testing steps, or if that's something you do after like you have like your initial, I know you're working on that overall test plan. So if you're ready, we can use whatever label you'd like to use, but
yeah,
at the same time, yeah, you seem quite busy with the overall testing pipeline. So yeah.
I'm not ready 100%, but maybe we can agree if input from my side is needed, you could just tag me there, and I'll do it for now. But in future, maybe once I realize like what's the current state, and like we have this plan and have like a picture of what tests are there already.
Yeah,
I can then have input on every issue that is ready for development, and then in development as well.
Yeah, I would actually go on to say, in like an ideal state, we would actually be changing these labels to potentially like problem validation, solution validation, and planning breakdown. So ideally, we have kind of that testing sorted out before someone actually starts development on it. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that or not. So like, you know, you're part of the planning process as instead of like, you know, we think we have the plan and then you come in and say, hey, like, have you thought about this or that for the testing procedures? So, you know, I think once we're ready to get to that, we can actually shift the label so that you're included on the issues much earlier on in the definition process, so that when it gets to ready for development, it's got everything it needs.
Okay. Is there labels like that already, or we would need to add them?
We have them already, so it's
Okay.
I can so sorry, let me I'll follow up after, but I'll add them to the agenda.
Okay, yeah, that's great, and I'll see what we can do there.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to have input before it's ready for development. I
Right.
totally agree.
Exactly what I was going to say. 100%. I'd much prefer, again, if you were involved as early as possible, just like with design and all the other engineering departments, figuring out in the implementation how we're going to test this feature, and then having you come in during the review cycle to make sure that that plan has been followed. Is there anything we haven't caught, or is there anywhere that we could, either in the follow-up or within the MR, what we could do to make it even better from a quality perspective?
Yeah.
Cool.
So those are
Thank
the
you. I
labels.
just don't want
Take a look.
to take more time because we are out of time, so
It's all good.
we can follow up later if anything.
Cool. Feel free to toss it into the Slack channel and see if there's anything else you'd like to discuss. But yeah, excited to get you more involved, but also don't want to overload you as well. So
Yeah, thanks.
cool. Well, everyone have a good rest of their Tuesday, and see you in the next one.
Bye.